The grand wedding hall of the city shimmered under thousands of golden candles. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like captured stars, and the polished marble floors reflected the soft glow. Outside, the streets of the city were quiet, cloaked in mist, but inside every noble and dignitary waited with bated breath. Lady Evelina, daughter of House Seraphine, stood at the altar in a gown that gleamed like moonlight on water. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear of the ceremony itself, but from the strange unease that had followed her all day. The orchestra began a gentle tune, and the murmurs of the guests softened as Evelina's heartbeats seemed to echo louder than the music. She glanced toward the doors where her groom, Lord Kieran, should have entered, a confident smile on his face. But he was not there. Time seemed to stretch. Evelina's chest tightened. Whispers floated around the hall. "Where is he?" someone asked, their voice barely above a breath. Evelina tried to steady herself. The sun caught the gemstones on her dress, scattering light like tiny rainbows across the marble. She had imagined this moment countless times. Her groom taking her hand, their vows spoken with strength and promise. But now the emptiness where Kieran should have been made her stomach twist. Minutes passed, yet there was no sign of him. Panic rippled through the hall. Guests shifted nervously, glances darting toward doors, staircases, even windows. The mayor's assistant whispered something in the priest's ear, and the priest adjusted his robes, trying to maintain composure. Then the doors at the back of the hall swung open with a soft creak, and a cold breeze rolled in. Evelina's dress fluttered slightly, as if the wind itself had come to watch her despair. But it wasn't Kieran who entered. A shadow lingered in the doorway. Evelina's pulse quickened. The figure moved forward with careful, deliberate steps. It was a man she had not met before, and yet there was something undeniable in his presence. Power, calm, and an air of danger. The crowd parted silently, as if sensing the weight of the moment. His dark coat shimmered faintly, and his eyes, sharp and calculating, never left Evelina. He exuded control, the kind that belonged not to nobles or kings, but to men who ruled from shadows. Evelina's lips parted, but no words came. She felt a strange pull, a mixture of fear and curiosity that made her knees weak. From somewhere outside, a low rumble began to grow. It started softly, a vibration that echoed through the marble floor, then grew louder, insistent, like the heartbeat of a giant awakening from slumber. Guests looked toward the windows and doors, confusion and alarm spreading like wildfire. Then it appeared. Hundreds of black SUVs, engines roaring in unison, filled the avenue outside the hall. The convoy stretched as far as the eye could see. A collective gasp rose from the guests. The man in the shadowed coat, this mysterious stranger, did not flinch. He only watched Evelina with an intensity that made her forget the crowd, the candles, even the vanished groom. A servant, pale and trembling, whispered in a hurried tone, "Lady Evelina, that is Don Alaric." Her breath caught. The name meant nothing to her, and yet the weight of it seemed to fill the room. Don Alaric, the powerful, the feared, the man who ruled the city's underworld without ever raising a hand in public. His reputation was whispered in every noble house, a shadow that had claimed kings, thieves, and betrayers alike. Alaric's eyes met hers directly, and for a moment the chaos of the hall melted away. The clamor of whispers, the murmurs of outrage, the panic at Kieran's disappearance, they all seemed distant. Only he remained, a dark figure of authority and strange allure. Evelina's mind raced. Why had he come? What did he want? And more importantly, why did she feel that the answer to her unease lay in the depths of his gaze? Alaric's lips curved in a faint, unreadable smile. He raised a single gloved hand, and a voice low and commanding reached Evelina without the need for amplification. "Lady Evelina," he said, "come with me, and your troubles may find an answer. Refuse, and you may lose more than your wedding." The hall froze. Every guest turned toward the front, eyes wide with fear and fascination. Evelina felt the gravity of the choice before her. To step toward Alaric was to step into the unknown, into danger that promised either salvation or ruin. And yet, to remain meant waiting for answers that might never come, and bearing the humiliation of a groom who had abandoned her at the altar. Her hand clutched the fabric of her gown as her mind raced. Her father's eyes were sharp, a mixture of pride and fear. Her mother's lips were pressed in a thin line. No one moved. The moment belonged to her. Evelina's steps were small at first, tentative, as she walked toward the stranger whose very presence seemed to command the world. The rumble of the SUVs outside was a drumbeat to her racing heart. Each step echoed like a drum in her chest. Each breath mingled with the scent of candle wax and polished wood. Alaric extended his arm, not in ceremony, but in offer. It was a gesture of power, control, and a silent promise that he could protect, if she was willing to trust him. Evelina paused. For years she had been trained to be cautious, to obey, to measure every word and action. But now all that training seemed irrelevant. She saw not a man, but a force, a shadow who might change everything she thought she knew. Finally, she placed her hand in his. The moment her fingers brushed his, a shiver ran through her, a warning and a thrill intertwined. Guests murmured, but Evelina barely heard them. Her world had narrowed to the single point of his gaze and the pull it exerted on her very being. The convoy moved forward as if sensing her choice. Tires crunched on the cobblestones, the engine's growls echoing like thunder. Alaric did not rush her, but his presence pushed her forward, guiding her through the chaos of the hall and into the night. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. Mist wrapped the street in ghostly tendrils, curling around the SUVs like living things. Evelina looked back once, at the hall, at her family, at the empty space where Kieran should have been. She felt a strange sadness, a grief for the life that might have been. Alaric's voice cut through the mist. Do not fear what lies ahead. Fear what will happen if you hesitate. She nodded, though uncertainty still gripped her. The city stretched before them, dark and alive, its secrets hidden behind every shadow. Evelina's heart raced and she felt the first spark of something unfamiliar. Trust, curiosity, and perhaps the beginning of something more. As they reached the lead SUV, Alaric turned to her, his expression unreadable. Tonight, you will see the truth, he said. The man who left you is not the one you thought he was, and the world you know is only the surface of what exists. The doors opened, inviting her into darkness and power, and Evelina stepped forward. Every heartbeat was a drum, every breath a promise of a story yet to unfold. The SUV's engines roared again, moving as one, carrying them into the mist, into the unknown, leaving behind the echoes of a wedding that would never be forgotten. And for Evelina, the night was only beginning. Cliffhanger. In the distance, a shadow moved silently across the rooftops, a figure watching her departure with eyes that gleamed in the dark. Evelina did not yet know that this figure, neither Groom nor Mafia lord, would become the catalyst of trials and revelations that would shape her destiny. The convoy moved through the misty streets like a single living creature. Engines growled softly, echoing off the stone buildings, while Evelina's heart beat in rhythm with their motion. She sat in the lead SUV beside Alaric, who seemed completely at ease. His posture straight, eyes scanning the city as if reading its secrets. The air inside the vehicle was cool and silent, broken only by the hum of engines and Evelina's own uneven breaths. She could not speak. Every time she tried, words tangled in her throat. The city outside was cloaked in shadows, the mist curling around the buildings like smoke from a slow-burning fire. The streets seemed empty, yet she felt eyes upon them hidden in the darkness. Evelina's mind kept returning to the wedding hall, the empty space where Kieran should have stood, the whispers of guests, her family's worried glances. Alaric broke the silence at last, his voice low, smooth, and commanding, yet not unkind. Your world is not what it seems, Lady Evelina, he said. Tonight, you will see the layers beneath the surface, the truths hidden by wealth, power, and fear. You will also see the reason your groom fled. Evelina frowned, curiosity mingling with fear. Why me? She asked quietly. Why come for me? Why now? Alaric's gaze softened for a fraction of a second, enough for her to catch a hint of something human beneath the formidable mask. Because you are stronger than you know, he said, and because you are in danger. The men who plotted against you do not care about the ceremony or the laws of nobles. They care about control, and your family stands in their way. She swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing against her chest. Danger had always been a story in her life, something read in books or whispered in court gossip, but now, danger was real, surrounding her like a living thing. The convoy slowed, and soon they arrived at a private estate on the outskirts of the city. The mansion loomed in the darkness, its walls seeming carved from shadow itself. Gargoyles perched on the roof, and the iron gates bore intricate designs that spoke of age and power. The gardens were labyrinthine, with hedges taller than a man, twisting paths, and fountains that caught the faint light of the moon. Alaric led her inside, and the interior was as extraordinary as the exterior. Candles lined the walls, casting long shadows that danced across ornate tapestries. The floors were polished stone, cool under her bare feet, and the air was scented with herbs and something darker, something ancient and commanding. "Why are you here?" Evelina asked again, stepping carefully. Her hand brushed the cold stone wall as she moved, grounding herself. Alaric's eyes flickered to her, unreadable. "To offer you a choice," he said. "You may leave and face what is coming alone, or you may stay and learn truths that will give you strength beyond what you imagine." She hesitated, pride warred with fear. She had been abandoned by her groom, left humiliated in front of her family and guests. But to stay with a man who ruled in shadows, who commanded fear and respect alike. It was unthinkable, and yet there was something about him, something in the calm power of his presence that made her believe she could survive with him rather than without. Evelina's hand trembled slightly as she stepped closer. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Alaric's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I do not want anything you cannot give willingly. I offer protection, guidance, and truth. In return, I ask only your courage." Her breath caught. Courage. That was something she had in abundance when she had to hide behind polite smiles and proper behavior. But courage in the face of the unknown, that was different. That required a willingness to trust. And trust was dangerous. He led her to a balcony overlooking the city. The misty streets spread out below, ghostly and quiet. Lights twinkled here and there, but beyond them, shadows moved, hiding secrets and threats alike. Evelina felt the weight of the night pressing around her. "They are out there," Alaric said, gesturing to the streets below. "Those who betrayed you, those who forced your groom to flee, they believe you are weak. They do not know what you are capable of." She looked at him, searching his face for hints, for lies, for the slightest truth. All she saw was calm, controlled power and a strange kind of patience. He was not like anyone she had known, not like the nobles, the suitors, or the courtiers who had courted her hand. He was something else entirely. "What if I refuse?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alaric's eyes darkened. "Then you will face them alone," he said, "and they will not show mercy. The world outside is not kind, Lady Evelina, and neither is the city when it remembers betrayal." The wind whispered across the balcony, and she shivered. She wanted to refuse, to turn away, to run back to the halls where she had known order, predictability, and the faint comfort of familiarity. But she also knew that those halls, those golden chandeliers, could not protect her from what was coming. "Then I will stay," she said finally, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. Alaric's lips curved into a faint, approving smile. "Good," he said. "Tonight you will learn the truth, and you will begin to see that your strength is not in what you own, or in your title, but in what you choose to face and endure." They spent the hours moving through the mansion, talking in hushed tones. Alaric explained the hidden politics of the city, the forces that moved in darkness and the ways power was wielded quietly but decisively. Evelina listened, absorbing every word, trying to understand the world she had never seen. Each revelation made her pulse quicken, fear mixing with fascination. At one point, Alaric led her to a room lined with mirrors. Candles flickered along the walls, and Evelina saw herself reflected countless times. She looked at the face staring back, a young woman once sheltered, now stepping into a world of shadows and power. The reflection seemed to hold a promise, a challenge. "You see yourself differently now," Alaric said softly, standing behind her. "Do not mistake this world for cruelty alone. It tests those who enter it. It will not bow to weakness, but it rewards courage. Evelina turned slightly, meeting his gaze in the mirror. There was a tension between them, unspoken and powerful. She felt it in every glance, every word, every shared silence. It was strange, unsettling, and yet compelling. Before she could speak, a distant scream pierced the quiet of the estate. It echoed across the gardens, sharp and sudden, like a warning. Evelina froze, heart hammering. Alaric's expression shifted instantly, darkening. "They are coming," he said, his voice low but urgent. "The men who forced your groom to flee are moving faster than we expected. You must be ready." Evelina felt a surge of fear and adrenaline. The city had been quiet, almost unreal, and now it roared with unseen threats. She realized how fragile her safety had been, how unprepared she might have been alone. But beside Alaric, she felt a strange kind of strength, a shield of calm and certainty in a storm of chaos. He handed her a cloak, dark and soft, and helped her into it. "We will face them together," he said, "not because you need saving, but because together, we are stronger than they imagine." The words settled over her like a cloak of warmth. Evelina felt the first hint of trust, delicate but growing, in the presence of this man who ruled shadows yet offered guidance without expectation. Hours passed as they moved through the estate, training, planning, and preparing. Evelina's fear slowly transformed into resolve. She no longer felt like the abandoned bride from the wedding hall. She was becoming a force to be reckoned with, shaped by courage, intelligence, and the strange, magnetic presence of Alaric. As dawn approached, the mist thickened around the estate, curling like fingers across the gardens. Evelina stepped onto the balcony once more, looking toward the city, toward the streets where danger waited. Alaric joined her, silent but present. The tension between them lingered, unspoken but undeniable, a mixture of respect, fascination, and the beginnings of trust. "Tonight," Alaric said quietly, "was only the beginning. The world is larger and darker than you imagine, and the people who threaten you will not wait, but neither will you." "Remember that," Evelina nodded, feeling the weight of his words, the weight of responsibility, and the spark of courage growing inside her. Cliffhanger. From the shadows of the distant rooftops, a figure watched the estate, unseen. Eyes gleamed in the darkness. A whisper of movement, a sign of power and intent, promised that the trials Evelina faced were only beginning. She would not yet know who this observer was or what role they would play, but their presence heralded danger, choices and revelations that would test every ounce of her newfound courage. The city was alive with shadows as Evelina and Alaric moved through its streets. Mist hung low over cobblestones, curling around lanterns like smoke from a distant fire. Every corner, every archway seemed to hold a secret, a whisper of danger. The rooftops above were dark and silent, but Evelina felt eyes on them, unseen observers marking their path. Alaric led her through narrow alleys and hidden passages, his presence calm, yet commanding. Evelina's pulse raced, a mixture of fear and anticipation. She had learned much in the hours since leaving the estate. The web of conspiracies, the forces that sought her family's downfall, and the true measure of her own courage. Yet nothing prepared her for what awaited in the cathedral at the heart of the city. The cathedral rose before them like a monument of shadow and stone, its spires reaching into the night sky. Its walls bore scars of long-forgotten battles, and the gargoyles perched along the ledges seemed alive, eyes glinting in the moonlight. The massive doors carved with intricate symbols creaked as Alaric pushed them open. Inside, the cathedral was still, the silence almost sacred. Candles lined the walls, casting long, wavering shadows that danced across the stone floor. Evelina's footsteps echoed, each one a reminder that she was no longer the frightened bride abandoned at the altar. She was here to face her betrayers, and she would do so with strength and clarity. Alaric stopped near the center of the nave, turning to her. "This is where it ends," he said, his voice steady and low. "Kieran and his allies believe they can control the outcome. They underestimate you." "Do not," Evelina nodded. She had spent the night training her mind and body, learning the strategies that Alaric taught her. She had faced her fear, and now it was tempered into resolve. Her gown, though still elegant, seemed to move with purpose rather than display. She was no longer merely a lady of noble birth. She was a force in her own right. The first sounds of movement came from the shadows. Figures emerged, masked and silent, their intentions clear in the tension that hung in the air. Kieran appeared at the front, his posture defensive, eyes darting between Evelina and Alaric. The once charming suitor now looked small and uncertain, dwarfed by the presence of the Mafia lord and the determination of the woman he had abandoned. "You shouldn't have come here," Kieran said, voice tight. "This is your choice, Evelina." "You don't belong in this world?" Evelina stepped forward, her chin lifted. "I belong wherever I choose," she said, her voice steady. "I am not the same person you left behind." A hush fell over the cathedral. The masked figures shifted, sensing the change in energy. Evelina felt the power that came from facing fear, from choosing courage over doubt. She no longer needed protection. She had strength, clarity, and the support of a man who saw her as an equal, not a prize. Alaric moved beside her, silent but present, a shadow and a shield. Together they were formidable. Evelina realized that trust and courage could create bonds stronger than fear and betrayal. And now, it was time to put that realization to the test. The confrontation began not with violence, but with strategy. Evelina anticipated Kieran's moves, guiding the confrontation with sharp insight and calm authority. Alaric's precision and experience complemented her instincts. They moved like dancers, each step measured, each choice deliberate. The conspirators faltered, unprepared for a woman who had learned the rules of power and now wielded them with quiet mastery. Kieran, seeing his allies fail, faltered in confidence. He tried to regain control, but Evelina anticipated his tactics, countering with clever maneuvering that exposed the truth of his betrayal. She no longer felt anger alone. She felt clarity and control, the calm that comes from facing fear and refusing to yield. At the height of the confrontation, Evelina stepped forward to address Kieran directly. Her voice, clear and unwavering, echoed through the cathedral. "Your betrayal is your own. I am no longer dependent on your promises or your protection. I am stronger than your fear. And you will see that strength today." Kieran's eyes widened, the realization dawning that Evelina had changed. The power dynamics had shifted. She was no longer a bride abandoned at the altar. She was a force he could neither control nor intimidate. The masked figures, sensing their leader's uncertainty, began to retreat, slipping into the shadows from which they had emerged. Evelina and Alaric watched them vanish, their presence a reminder that threats existed beyond what the eye could see, but that courage and strategy could overcome them. As the final figures disappeared, Evelina felt a shift within herself. She had faced humiliation, fear, and uncertainty and emerged stronger, clearer, and unshakable. She turned to Alaric, who observed her with the faintest smile, admiration in his eyes. "You have changed," he said quietly. "Not just tonight, but in every moment since you chose to face the unknown. Your strength is not just in action, but in resolve. That is what makes you powerful." Evelina looked at him, feeling the depth of connection that had grown between them. It was not fear or obligation that bound them together, but respect, trust, and understanding. She realized that her journey with him was only beginning, that the bond forged in chaos and uncertainty would guide her through future challenges. Outside the cathedral, the mist began to lift, revealing a city still cloaked in shadows but awakening to the possibility of a new dawn. Evelina felt a sense of peace settle over her, the tension of the night replaced with clarity and purpose. She had faced the betrayal of a groom, the machinations of conspirators, and the hidden dangers of her city, and she had survived, stronger and wiser than before. Alaric moved closer, his presence steadying. "The city is not yet free of its secrets," he said, "but you have proven that you can face them, and that you can stand without fear. That is more than many can claim." Evelina nodded, a quiet smile forming. "And I will continue to stand," she said. "Not alone and not in fear, but with those I trust and those who respect my strength." They walked through the cathedral together, moving toward the doors that opened onto the city streets. The first rays of dawn were beginning to pierce the mist, casting pale light over stone and shadow. Evelina felt the weight of the night lift, replaced by a sense of possibility. The world was dangerous, yes, but she had learned that courage, trust, and clarity could illuminate even the darkest paths. As they stepped into the morning, Evelina glanced back at the cathedral. It had witnessed fear, betrayal, and revelation, but it had also witnessed strength, resolve, and transformation. She understood now that power was not taken. It was earned through courage and choice. Alaric walked beside her silently. The tension between them softened, replaced with mutual respect and understanding. Evelina felt the connection that had grown in the shadows of danger and uncertainty. It was not mere fascination or intrigue. It was recognition of equality, trust and shared purpose. A gentle wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of the city's early morning, and Evelina realized that her journey was far from over. The challenges ahead would test her again, but she was no longer afraid. She had faced betrayal, danger, and uncertainty, and emerged unbroken. As they moved through the awakening city, a distant figure watched from the rooftops. Evelina did not see the shadow nor know its intent, but the presence reminded her that the world held mysteries yet to be uncovered, challenges yet to be faced, and alliances yet to be formed. Alaric glanced at her, his expression unreadable but steady. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we face it together, not as protector and ward, but as equals." Evelina met his gaze, feeling the truth of his words resonate within her. "Together," she agreed, her voice calm and certain. And in that moment, as the city stirred beneath the rising sun, Evelina knew that she had found not only her courage, but her choice. She would no longer be defined by fear, betrayal, or the whims of others. She would define herself, her strength, and her destiny. The world was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but Evelina had learned that she could navigate it with clarity, courage, and trust. And in the quiet understanding between her and Alaric, she knew that the bond forged in the darkness would guide her through whatever shadows awaited. The city held its breath as the dawn fully broke, casting golden light across rooftops, streets, and the cathedral. Evelina took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past night lift, replaced by the promise of a new day. She had been tested, transformed, and redeemed, not by magic alone, but by her own choices, courage, and determination. Cliffhanger, ending. As Evelina and Alaric walked into the city, the distant shadows shifted. New forces, unseen but powerful, were beginning to stir. Evelina's journey was not finished, but for the first time she knew she would face the future not as a frightened bride, but as a woman of strength, purpose, and resolve, ready to shape her own destiny in a world of shadows and light.